I kept noticing this phenomenon that I call deep procrastination, where essentially the student would snap and just couldn't do work anymore, like no work.
But your brain is looking for efficiency. So if you can actually experience that your limiting belief makes no sense, it blows those neural networks out pretty quickly.
Writing, journaling, talking to others, all of those things, they help. Actually, there's a lot of things that everyone can use right now to make their life better.
And so then I invented this whole program where basically, in some sense, I was helping people hack their brains.
And this becomes the daily practice. This is the mind hack.
Throughout the year, we've spoken to some of the greatest people in the brain space and neuroscientists, psychologists who know exactly about the brain. So today we compiled 6 of the greatest mind hacks that we have from people like Newport and so many other experts in the space. Exactly how you can use these hacks to become successful, have a better mindset, and be happy. Today's video was sponsored by Mulliganbrothers.com, where you can now get the new journal, which for me is a mind hack because it organizes my day and it frees my mind of so many different thoughts. With the link in the description, you can find that, and all the profits go back into making these videos possible. But before that, let's join some of the greatest people in the brain space. How can we hack our minds that can lead us to success, happiness, fulfillment, benefit our entrepreneurship, and so much more? I'm your host, Jordan Mulligan. Let's jump into the video.
When you feel like a difficult action is being undertaken because you chose to, you can tolerate that difficulty much better than if you feel like you were forced into it or was someone else's decision. And now you're facing difficulty. We feel this intuitively, right? If you're doing something that's hard and it really wasn't your choice to be doing it, we get incredibly frustrated. So you have to drive across town to pick something up. You don't want to do it. Really, someone kind of dropped the ball and they were like, you have to, they forgot something and now you have to return and whatever, go back to your kid's school or something to pick something up, and you get stuck in traffic. It's like much more frustrating than I'm going across town to get to the gym. Part of my workout routine. You're frustrated about the traffic, but your just hardship was based on something you were doing, you chose to do. Or, similarly, you go through an elite military training. You chose to do it. You're doing it for a really good reason. You can put up with all the hardship and pain of it. So it's an important principle to keep in mind when thinking about doing hard things, is we can do very hard things, but the rationale really matters, So it's not, hard work is not just we have a certain amount of substance to spend and who cares how we spend it. No, the amount we have, the energy we have to spend on hard tasks is very influenced by why we're doing the hard task. And so it's a hack in some sense, but also I think it's much more fundamental. People who do really hard things, you better believe they're tapping from that reserve of these are things I chose to do for good reasons. I really encountered this first was when I was writing those student books and I was dealing with a lot of students. And I was dealing with students at elite schools. So I was at MIT at the time doing my PhD. And so I was dealing with MIT students and Harvard students, which were nearby. And I would just help students, right? And I kept noticing this phenomenon that I call deep procrastination, where essentially the student would snap and just couldn't do work anymore. Like no work. Like your paper is due. It's worth half your grade. Like I just can't do it. And the professor's like, all right, I'll give you an extension, but you're going to fail this course if you don't do this paper. And they have nothing else. They just can't do it, right? They just snap. And I called it deep procrastination. What tended to cause it? Because it sounds a little bit like depressive syndrome, but it wasn't quite depression. It was different, right? They weren't ahedonic. They just couldn't do the work. What was going on in a lot of these cases was the courses were very hard. They were because they're at MIT. They're doing really hard courses, right? It's hardship. And they were doing them, it was like a major because their parents wanted them to do it. They were there because they were, I got to grind through this so I can get this job as a doctor because that's what my parents want me to do. And it was a clash of hardness versus lack of intrinsic motivation. And their mind just shut down. Like, nope, we're not doing it anymore. And so then I invented this whole program. I called it the Romantic Scholar, this whole program to help sidestep that, where basically, in some sense, I was helping people hack their brains, students hack their brains, where I had them inject all of these things into their life that signaled to themselves that they intrinsically valued what they were studying. So it was things like start going to talks. Like when people come for, if you're a math major. Like when mathematicians come to give talks, like go to the talks. There's no reason for you to be there from like a grade standpoint. It's not part of your classes, but go to the talks. Read books by people in your field, just for your own leisure. Like I read about these type of scientists, or if I'm an English major, I read biographies of it. Find different ways and settings to do your work that's more inspiring. And I wrote this essay back then called Heidegger with Hefeweizen. I was like, go to a pub and have the book, and there's a fire, and have a pint. And in other words, like do all of these things because it will signal to yourself, I like the life of the mind. I like academia. I like college. These ideas have intrinsic value outside of just grades and what job it's going to open up. And it was a inoculation against deep work. You built a lifestyle of enjoyment and gratitude and investment of personal energy into what you're studying. Suddenly you can study a heck of a lot more of that material without burning out and without procrastinating. So that type of hack, I think, applies for almost any type of work. Build a lifestyle around it that signals to yourself that I love this world. I take this world seriously. I value this world. I am gracious for the opportunity to actually be a part of this world and contribute something. You get a lot more done.
If you was to deal with somebody who was an entrepreneur or businessman, what's the sort of brain hacks or things that you would work on, simple things that people can use straight away?
That's a great one. I'll give you a very specific answer. Diary. Of all the things, I would call it brain diary. So if there's a business woman who's seeing me right now and she wants one kind of concrete tip that could help her kind of be on top of her thing, here's the thing that I would say. Every person has a profile of thinking that is theirs. There isn't a correct one or incorrect one, but there is one that is yours. Maybe you, Jordan, are making decisions better in the morning and your wife makes better decisions in the evening. Maybe your best friend makes decisions better when they're hungry and your boss when he's full. One of you makes it better when you're surrounded by a ton of people giving you advice and there's a lot of noise. Another person, they're alone. It's not that there's a correct answer. Decisions should be made in the morning, alone, when you're full. There's no correct answer, but there is one for you. For every person, there is a profile, a set of kind of attributes that makes their choices best for them. Best means their outcomes are positive and they're happy with the choices they made. They don't go back after and say, oh, I should have done this. You like them. Maybe they're wrong, but you still say, this is what I would do if I were given the same opportunity tomorrow to do the same thing. Those are the ones we want to kind of amplify and nurture. So the thing is, everyone needs to learn their profile, know what it is. Neuroscientists would offer you one approach, which is to bring it to the lab, put something on your head or put you in a scanner and have you play all kinds of games and tests, and they will tell you. You seem to do better when the tasks are cognitive than emotional. You seem to do better when the tasks are real-time versus given more time. They're going to tell you. And one approach is to have me or your local neuroscientist study your brain and give you the answer. Another approach is diary. You can get, I think, 80% of what you can get from a neuroscientist by just observing yourself. So here's what you do. You take a piece of paper or a little kind of notebook, and you live your life for the next week while monitoring it. What it means is when you're confronted with a choice, big one or small one, you pause for a second, you take note of the condition, and then you make the choice. For example, you're in a restaurant and they offer you the steak, salmon, or salad. You take a note. These are the options I was given, and here's what's happening. I'm stressed right now. It's morning. I'm hungry. I'm alone. You kind of take, and then you make a choice. You choose the salad, and then you write in your diary. These are the options I had. These are the conditions I was in. This is what I chose. And then you move on. And another choice comes, and maybe this one is, would I sell my company or not? A much bigger one than the steak salmon, but you still approach it the same way. Say, here's the option. Here's the advice I got from my finance person, from my best friend, and so on. Here's the choice I made. You just write the conditions, the options, decisions, and then you wait. At the end of the week, you go back to your diary, you look one by one at choices, and you, from the perspective of time, evaluate them and you give them a thumbs up, thumbs down. Say, salmon still would make the same choice, I'm happy with that. Merger of the company, probably not. And you kind of give them a score, I don't know, 1 to 10, or just plus or minus, or something that makes you look back at the choices. And then you do the last part. You can do it alone, you can do it with someone who you trust to be fair and objective, you look at what's common to all the choices that you were happy with and what's common to all the choices you're not happy with. Maybe you're always with someone. We make not the same person even, but with someone. Maybe you're always hours before the deadline. Maybe it's always in the morning. You start learning what is your profile. When you do that, you will say, okay, I guess I didn't know, but I guess I'm a morning person. I think I'm tired in the morning, but I'm happy with the choice I made in the morning, and I didn't notice that. So from now on, I'll try to put myself more in the morning when I'm about to make choices that are critical. Maybe I realize that this person that I thought is actually not helpful for me is really helpful, because when he says something, I do the opposite, but I want to hear his opinion so I can do the opposite. So I'm going to bring him to the room every time I make a choice so I can see what he says and then go make the opposite. So it doesn't matter. Like, it's not that it tells you what choices to make are, but it tells you what conditions you want to put your brain in. So you're going to make choices that would align more with your outcomes that you like.
There's only two states of emotion: powerful states and primal states. The parasympathetic nervous system is active and the sympathetic nervous system is active. And the name of the game is to be in parasympathetic more, to be in a powerful state. And so we said, okay, got it. So what causes me to move into a primal state? Stress, anxiety, overwhelm, anger, jealousy. And what we see is that it's not the experiences of your life, it's the meaning that you're giving it. So that's kind of step two. Take responsibility that you are the architect of your own emotional experience, and that the only thing causing your emotions is the meaning that you're giving, whatever you're experiencing. What we also found was not only is the only cause of all of your personal suffering your own thinking, but that the quality of the thinking is that it's 100% of the time untrue. So your nervous system is designed to move you into a primal state, stress, anxiety, overwhelm, when you're entangling with thoughts or ideas that aren't in alignment with the resonance of reality. Reality has a resonance. The Hindus might describe it as the Om resonance. Christians might describe it as the Amen resonance. Sacred geometrists, right, describe sort of the mathematical structure of reality. Oftentimes it's described as love. And the truth is that reality is a superorganism. We're just part of it. And so all of life is a superorganism that's connected. And we like to just call it intelligence. Some people call it God or Allah or Jesus. We just look at it as the superorganism of intelligence. It includes the cosmos. It is the cosmos. And it's intelligent at a macroscopic level, right? The perfectly orbiting constellations that don't crash into each other. It's observable on a planetary level, that perfect little thin blue line of oxygen and carbon dioxide and other elemental factors that allow life on this planet to exist. You can see it if you just watch the Our Planet documentary by David Attenborough and you look at the incredible intelligence of how the entire world's ecosystems operate together. And then we can see it within our own bodies in the miracle of the fact that you can cut your skin and within a couple of days it grows back, that you don't have to beat your own heart, that you don't have to pump your own blood. Intelligence is everywhere, it's all that is. And so there are laws that govern this intelligence. And one of the fundamental laws is that it is working in infinitely intelligent and expansive ways for your greatest growth, your greatest prosperity, and your greatest evolution. Always. Always, in every moment. So when something doesn't go the way that you expect it to, you move into a primal state because you misunderstand that it's going exactly the way it should be going. And so this is another way of describing acceptance and surrender to life. But how can you accept and surrender to life if you doubt that life is working for you? So when you begin to entertain notions that life is not working for you, it creates dissonant energy in your body. It's not in alignment with the energy of reality itself. Think of it as a plus and a minus. The beautiful infinite intelligence of life that's always working for you in every experience you have, even when your girlfriend breaks up with you, and even when you lose your job, and even when you lose a loved one, and even when you have a diagnosis of a disease, and when things are not going the way that you expect it to. Life is actually always working for you. That's a positive energy. But when you have this idea that it should be other than what it is, and that life is somehow a problem, that's a negative energy. And you experience that dissonance in your nervous system as a primal state. So my practice is to notice when I move into a primal state, because I know that one thing is happening, and that is I'm thinking something that's not true. So that is sort of the 50% of the work of meeting your thought within a container of what's really true. Because now I get to look at that thought and go, she shouldn't have said that. That's making me angry. Now, if she shouldn't have said that is moving me into a primal state, then I know that it's not true. And I can begin to question it. And if it's not true, some form of the opposite must be true. So I go, wait a minute. She should have said that to me? Yeah, I guess she should have said that to me. Why? Oh, because she was triggered. Because she's had her own experiences in her own life that have caused her to interpret this interaction we're having as threatening. She's having a rough day. Her cup is full. Of course she should have said what she said to me. I don't have to agree with it, but just notice how the emotional tone changes now. Now I'm compassionate. Now I'm empathetic. And that's naturally there when you're aligned with reality itself. And that's transformation. The moment you can see your unintelligent thinking is unintelligent, you can't unsee it. And so what I found was that was the fastest way to producing more permanent change in the way that I was experiencing life. Because I was going to personal development events and jumping up and down for 3 days and feeling really, really excited and open to a whole new possibility of life or my business or my health or my relationships. And then I'd go home and 2 days later, I'd have a personal development hangover. I felt even worse than I did before. And the truth was, because I went home with the same brain. But your brain is looking for efficiency. So if you can actually experience that your limiting belief makes no sense, it blows those neural networks out pretty quickly. The brain goes, there's really no need for us to go back to that as frequently. Now, again, it's a practice because you'll go out, you'll get triggered by the same thing, but now you've actually seen the thinking is unintelligent. Now you've actually seen the new decision or the truth or the interpretation that you've created, and this becomes the daily practice. This is the mind hack.
So deep work came as a response to that book on career advice, because I wrote that book on career advice saying, get really good at things. And so then people said, well, how do I get really good at things? And a big part of that answer was deep work. And so it's why it was the follow-up to that 2012 book. And so deep work is just my term for where you are concentrating without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. So you're giving someone your full attention, but that without distraction piece is a key attribute of the definition. Without distraction means no context shifting. This is something that a lot of people don't realize, and it causes a lot of issues in terms of actually trying to do cognitive work, which is, we know multitasking is bad. We've known this since the early 2000s, that if I'm literally trying to do two things simultaneously, okay, I can't really do them simultaneously. I'm switching back and forth. I'll do both worse. We know this. It's why if I'm working on editing a documentary or writing an article, I'm not going to keep my email inbox open while I'm doing it, or I'm not going to be on a phone call while I'm trying to write. I can't actually do both. We all recognize that, and we basically don't do that anymore. What we don't realize for the most part, however, is that when you do a quick check of something, so you have to glance at email, you have to glance at Slack, you glance at what's going on social media on your phone, and then come back to the main thing. There is a long after effect of that quick check. It could last 10 or 15 minutes after that check happens. What happens from a neurological perspective is that we're slow to completely change our cognitive context. So when we see something that's highly salient, like a emotionally affecting social media post or emails that we need to get back to these people eventually, but we can't get back to them right now, but we know they're waiting for something, it initiates a context shift. In the brain, there's networks that are being inhibited, other networks that are being amplified. So we start this expensive context shift, and these can take a long time to actually finish. We don't let it finish because we're just glancing. Then we come back to editing the documentary or working on our article. Now we're trying to abort that context shift and then get our brain back to the context of what we're working on. And so what we end up with is this collision of initiated, aborted, initiated context shifts, the effect of which is cognitive capacity reduces, cognitive fatigue raises, and a background hum of anxiety is enhanced. So what is happening right now to a lot of people who are doing high-level knowledge work is that they think they're editing a documentary full-time. They think they're writing an article full-time because these quick checks of email and Slack and their phone, they only take 30 seconds and they don't have it open at the same time. But each of those quick checks is leaving this residue. And before that residue can clear, which might take 15 minutes before you're fully back in the context of the work, you check it again. And then you check it again. And so we're putting ourselves in this self-enforced state of reduced cognitive capacity. It feels terrible and we're exhausted. It's probably the feeling you're having trying to work on a documentary while having to context shift to all these business-related matters. So deep work is I'm not only focusing on something hard, I'm doing it for an extended amount of time with none of those context shifts. I'm basically avoiding those things that brings down my capacity so I can actually operate at high capacity. And I think it's a critical behavior for success in any sort of non-trivial knowledge work is the ability to give each thing attention until you reach a stopping point. So it can be your full cognitive context is the thing you're working on. This is how you unlock the full potential of your brain, avoid fatigue, avoid anxiety. One thing at a time, giving each thing its attention due, not having this background interleaved concurrent quick checks of all these channels simultaneously. I think that is the key to satisfaction, actually producing stuff that you're proud of.
The people we interact with input our brain, whether they try to persuade us and actively try to give us content, or whether they just act next to us and our brain absorb that. So for example, if you want to be funny, one way to become funnier is to actually read jokes and kind of try to think of a lot of scenes in your life and see what's funny about them and make them work cognitively. Another entirely different approach is to put yourself next to comedians. Just presently sit yourself next to them and just talk to them. You will learn without cognitively being aware of that a lot of things, how they cue a joke, kind of how they set it up, when the punchline comes. You won't be able to even express it in words and say, what they did is they took a pause and then put the punchline and this works. Your brain is like a sponge. It constantly takes cues. And if you surround yourself by a lot of people that carry traits that you want, they will leak into you without you knowing how. You will just start being funny after a year being next to me without knowing actually how did I learn this thing, or how did I become so good in telling a story, how did I become so good in solving problems of that nature. If you surround yourself by people that carry the things you want, it will leak into you. That's the approach that's kind of social. And technology is another one that I think will become more and more dominant in the coming years, which is we now know how to change brains by thinking about them like a car mechanic, like actually changing things. So if you have trauma that you cannot get out of, like you keep reliving and saving it, and you don't know how to deal with that, we have all kinds of treatments, ranging from the kind of old-fashioned ones of the last 20 years, which is we're going to give you the right drug that will either block the resaving or will change somehow your emotional experiences, and in doing that it will leak into the memory and change your experience. That's kind of the psychiatric approach or the therapeutic approach. And we're now getting closer and closer to really neurosurgical one. We can go into your memory and zap something and do something while you think about that will make your memory different. And while right now this is mostly research, I think it's coming to everyone.
There was a time in our business recently where I keep my vision in my journal. I map my business vision on a whiteboard that sits in my office. I have a vision for my relationship. I have a vision for my life. I have a vision for my bank account. I have a vision for my impact. I have a vision for the work that I'm doing in the human evolution space. And I think with everything that happened with COVID-19 that year, I lost sight of my vision. We moved into so many pivots and just really trying to serve our community and make sure we could survive as a business. And there was such a disruption of the day-to-day norms that we were used to, which ended up being a tremendous blessing. But I was sharing with my wife, who runs and is president of our company. I said, things have felt stagnant recently, ever since January when we did the 2021 Bulletproof Business Challenge. And this was now 7 months later. And she said, yeah, things have felt stagnant. They felt uninspired. They've felt like low energy. And I went into the garage a couple of nights later and I saw the whiteboard that was normally in my office, which was in the garage because we were back in our second home and we had moved. And I looked at the whiteboard and it was the last time that I had done it. And the last month was the January with the 2021 Bulletproof Business Challenge. And it shocked me. I understand how important vision is. And what's interesting is that, vision and imagination are so powerful because the brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. So when you give yourself permission to envision a future, you literally start building memories in your brain of events that haven't happened yet. You start to create neural networks of your future. And so, think about how incredibly powerful that is. It almost sounds like something out of an Avengers movie. And so that change in your brain that holds the vision of the future now is what starts to tune you into the thoughts and the ideas that will bridge the gap between the now and the future. It begins to alter your perception so that you pay attention to things that will bridge the gap between now and the future. You begin to program your unconscious mind with that future. And so you start making decisions that you're not even aware of that become the bridge between now and that future. And then, of course, we live in a vibrational reality. Your brain is this electrical output device. Every time you think, you're creating electrical signals in your brain that's interacting and transmitting with an energetic reality. You can go back to high school science and understand that the table that's in front of you is 99.9% nothing, right? It's our tactile senses and our vision and our olfactory and our taste and our hearing. It's like browsers that are interpreting this matrix-like fluctuating energetic reality into a physical reality. So when you think thoughts, you're essentially adding to that energetic pool. And so that vision is also contributing to you outputting energy that's creating coincidences and synchronicities to bridge the gap between now and that vision. So vision is essential. And it reminds me of a quote that I think was attributed to Dwight D. Eisenhower that said, "Plans are useless, planning is essential." Every vision board I ever created, and I like to create the timing, January through December, what I'm going to achieve, when I'm going to do it. Never have I ever achieved even close to everything on that vision board. But what I did achieve was amazing. But the absence of the vision board for just 6 months in my life brought everything to a screeching halt. And that, again, just shocks me. It's profound. And so sometimes people will get vision board burnout because they're like, well, I'm creating the vision, but that's not what I actually created in my life. And I would say that's not actually really the important part. Just keep holding the vision. Over time, you'll get there. But in the meantime, you'll create extraordinary things that you absolutely love because you're going through the planning process for your future, right? The actual results of the plan is real.
Thank you to everybody who was involved in this video. I'm going to link them all down below. Guys, the idea of mind hacking and brain hacking isn't just a case of a switch that we turn on and that's it, we're fixed. It's repetitive using these new systems. It's repetitive lessons that we teach ourselves, and our brain can change. It's pliable. We can change our brain. And so many people think that as we get older into old life that we are stuck in our ways. We can't change these things. We can. It just takes repetition after repetition after repetition. It's so important that we understand the brain and its integrity to our success. It's so important that you use this on a day-to-day basis, you train it on a day-to-day basis, you use it in the correct way to become successful. Today's video was sponsored by Mulliganbrothers.com, the best motivational clothing brand in the world, where you can now get the new journal with the link in the description, and all the profits go back into making this content possible. We are going on a tour soon, guys. Please comment down below who you want to hear us interview, where you want us to fly to next, what place of the world there is a story that we are interested in. Let us know. We will go anywhere, from Antarctica to Brazil to, I'm thinking of random places, to Wales to, where else, Niamh? Scotland. Anywhere else? Come on, think of some locations. America, New York. I wouldn't mind going to New York. Comment down below, guys. Have a blessed and productive day. Go follow me on Instagram at Jordan Mulligan Brother, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.